Yearning to play a few rounds of Gwent. That ought to set me straight.
Welcome to Commandos Horn, episode 118. It is finally here, patch 3.1, which has changed the game in so many ways, made the meta a little bit frightening, but we got two pros to lead you through it, and lots of stuff to talk about with the new Syndicate faction ambassador, Trynet, and Gwent Open alumni, Molegion. Thanks for tuning in, my friends. This is Commandos Horn. It is August 9th already, 2019, a great day for Commandos Horn, a seasonal podcast of some frequency, but we're out there. We're still doing our thing. We're reigniting the Patreon. We're going to get some fun stuff out there, and we're going to get things started right here with episode 118 with Trynet and Molegion. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast from the new Commandos Horn studio.
It's good to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Molegion, we played a little bit of a co-op session before the stream started, or before the podcast started, where we played a little Great Swords, which is kind of like old Axemen, so that's going to be a lot of fun, a nice supplement to the podcast. We might even mention this deck a little bit on the cast. But if you want to see the video, it'll be on YouTube eventually. Patreon will probably get it as soon as it's available as well. Gentlemen, patch 3.1 has been a pretty big shakeup. We saw so many buffs, over 250 changes to the game, as well as a release of a sixth leader for the Syndicate faction, which was long-awaited Sigismund Dijkstra. Now maybe people are wishing that he didn't come out so soon, but I think now the tempers have maybe cooled on it a little bit. Trynet, new faction ambassador for Syndicate. Give me a sentence on how you feel about Dijkstra right now.
Are you sure Syndicate has 6 leaders? I thought they just had 1.
Yeah, right. You have Dijkstra who's doing everything better, right? That's what people are saying, right? Now, are you saying that as a reflection of what people are saying about the faction, or will you honestly believe that Dijkstra is just far and away better?
It's kind of true, right? So the payoff for King of Beggars with the bounty reduction, the tribute reduction just isn't really there right now. Mm-hmm. There's enough good cheap cards that you don't need your fences and your renegade mages necessarily be better. Paying 1 less tribute on your Morals isn't a huge deal. Guthron is strictly just like a downgrade to DJ. It's not hard to put enough crimes in your deck where you're getting the same number of coins, but DJ is significantly more granular. And your payoff is a much cheaper card. Instead of playing Bincy, you're playing Townsfolk. Mm-hmm. Horson still probably has some space. Being able to have guaranteed removal in your leader is kind of cool. Himmelfurt does something very different. Cleaver does something very different. But aside from the ones that are mainly seeing play, the Bincy's, the King of Beggars, the Dijkstras, it just seems like Dijkstra crowds them out.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with every leader having some interaction with coins. So usually the leader that can make the best use of the coins and can generate enough coins is going to be standing up there. And Gudrun had a lot of potential. I mean, obviously with Bincy and obviously with all of the great Horde cards, Redanian Elite and old Siggy Reuven, the card as well. But these days it just seems like, Dijkstra's got all that and carryover as well, the carryover that can't be touched. Molegion, what do you think about Dijkstra at this point in time?
Yeah, at first I underrated him a bit. I'm pretty bad at evaluating Syndicate cards because I also said during my card review with Gwent Town that Bounty is a bad mechanic and won't see any play. I'm obviously, in my defense, I did it before I knew what Evald Borsody does, and that's a helpful card for Bounty. Overall, I think Dijkstra is probably the most overrated leader ever. Mm-hmm. I mean, it doesn't mean he's not good. He's pretty good, but there's a lot of vulnerability in the decks that are played in the meta. For example, the Igor one is actually very vulnerable to bleeding, as Syndicate tends to be in general. Yeah, I don't think Dijkstra is that bad. I agree that he's better than King of Beggars and Junior.
Junior, yeah.
Yeah, just to keep it, civil and polite.
Wholesome Junior,
exactly. I really like Gudrun, and I think Gudrun is slightly better at one thing, which is being strong in a short round and consistent with flying Redanian and bleeding round 2. And there's also a downside to Dijkstra that generally the crime cards are weaker than the equivalents for the same provisions. For example, a good example would be even Slander and Witch Hunter, right? It's 1 point less. In theory, of course, it has other advantages. For example, not giving a body to react, but in general, it's just less points. And Swindle is, for example, worse than Sea Jackal, in my opinion, etc., etc. So there is some cost you pay by putting crime cards into your deck. But overall, I think Dijkstra is a good leader, especially if you want to focus your deck on crimes and on like long round power engines, Cataplakis, or some degenerate combos with Icar. That works too. I like the leader.
That's the
overall.
thing. Yeah, I mean, like the idea that that Dijkstra is able to do these things so much, like it's the fact that he has the carryover. Fuck, I had a really good counterpoint to what you were saying, and I think I just lost it there. But I think the idea was it was perfect. I was just adjusting my blinds and I lost my train of thought. I think the idea was I lost it. Trynet, do you have a counterpoint to anything Molegion said? It was perfect. I should have written it down.
I mean, comparing Sea Jackal and Swindle is kind of tricky because Swindle's a card that enables your cards in the later rounds, where Sea Jackal is more of like the payoff for all your coins that you've generated. It seems a little weird to lump those together just because they're both 4 provision cards. Similarly, when you compare like Eavesdrop to like Sewer Raiders, I think Eavesdrop is a significantly better card, especially after the buff.
Right.
Pickpocket's still just a fine card. A lot of people, Reggie was playing it in his Horsem Junior deck last season and was very much liking it. I've tended to like it more as I've played it more.
It's just the reliability of it, I guess. You don't have
exactly.
to worry.
It's
like,
just always 6 coins, and it helps you get your Flying Redinian out in multiple rounds. Novigradian Justice is obviously a great card.
And Tavern Brawl is the one that doesn't see any play, for sure.
Yeah.
That one's not out there.
For a reason, right?
Yeah, it's just not really. It's like it's a card that's like the effect is cool. Like when people saw it, they're like, "Oh, old treason." Yeah, like I don't think people mind it being in the deck, but I think it's just maybe there's going to be a meta or some cards that you could play or something that makes it a little bit better, but it's not very reliable. What I was going to say though, where I lost my train of thought, is that crime cards already have a lot of upside for each leader needing. Every leader gets the benefit of using the coins, and stuff like Cataplakis and Intimidate already make those cards better value in already. So the fact that Dijkstra gets another benefit to that is where, and it's all carryover. It's all, you can use it whenever you want as well. It's untouchable twice. So I think that's probably where it starts to feel, and the way what Trynet said about how Dijkstra feels superior in a lot of ways, because he can just make the best use of the coins. He can hold the most coins. He gets around the restrictions, right? You make 9 limit, and you have the cutoff that you lose half at the end of the round. Dijkstra gets around that by having over the limit and not having any of that cut at the end of the round. So what's the point of having the limitation if the limitation is so limiting? Dijkstra would stand out as the best leader because he gets around that stuff. So
additionally, the coins are so granular. You can spend them whenever you want. If you're getting bled, you can use it to force yourself out of the bleed. If you're trying to bleed your opponent, you can use them in round 2 and then still have carryover for round 3. It's not like Uthran where you have to commit to your ability all at once. It's a huge bonus.
So we have Synergy God in the chat now saying Usurper meta. Now Usurper obviously completely shuts down almost everything that Dijkstra does, and has the benefit of also catching the odd Ardal and me that also just really kind of throws off some of the stuff that they're able to do. But having Dijkstra just squished like that, and having Usurper prevalent in the meta obviously changes what can be reliably good as well, just because you're just not going to have your leader 1 out of 5 games, 1 out of 4 games. That's how okay are we? That's the thing about Usurper. It's like, yeah, now he's the hero, but there should be another way to figure it out. What do you guys think about that? Do you think there should be another way around this? I mean, you're saying there's vulnerabilities, Molegion, and you're saying there's a good amount, but that's just one strategy. If Dijkstra can do so many things well, isn't it realistic to think that he's just going to find a way to do almost everything Syndicate can do well?
Well, sure, he does everything. He can do everything that Syndicate does well, but he also has some weaknesses that other Syndicate decks have. And I always believe, like, since they introduced the faction, that it's always the fact that you are quite vulnerable to bleed, because in a short round you are less likely to gain both spenders and coin generators and use them in a very efficient way, which of course makes the deck significantly less consistent no matter what you are playing. Of course, the tricky part is winning round 1, but to actually do the bleed in round 2. But I think many decks are capable of doing that, like winning round 1, because in general the power level of every deck was raised, and the Syndicate cards didn't get that much buffs themselves. They just got the leader. I don't believe there was besides eavesdrop that there wasn't a significant
It's
buff.
like Sly Seductress, I think, was the only other one.
There was an indirect buff with the bounty you getting effectively bigger because all the cards got more power.
Yeah.
If we're
That's
trying to
fair.
find every way, that's definitely one of the ways.
It's pretty significant.
Yeah, there's more. Yeah, there's a lot more 7s in the game now, for sure. 6s and 7s in general, for sure.
And 4s of the 3s are 4s now, right? So you just always get one extra point, and getting down a 4 is not that difficult. But overall, like speaking just from my experience, I don't queue into Dijkstra that often. I played in both in ranks 5 to 1 and in pro ranking this season. And quite often they end up having like 3 or 4 unspent coins at the end of round 3 that they can't do anything with. And so far with the decks I played, I was doing pretty good job with winning round 1 and pushing round 2. Of course, it's quite frustrating if you can't win round 1 and can't push round 2, because then you just get destroyed by a 300 Igor Townsfolk combo, right?
Sure, yeah.
Unless you have like Irden. But,
feels really bad when that happens. It's just like, how was I ever supposed to beat this? It's you make sure that it doesn't happen to you in the deciding round, I guess. It's just really all you got to do.
It's even worse when you win round 1, bleed them, and it turns out they weren't even playing Igor in the first place.
Yeah, that happens too, because there's this second quite popular list that doesn't play it, which tends to be quite annoying, because this particular list isn't that vulnerable to bleeding, and you often don't want to find yourself bleeding this deck. But it's still Syndicate. You still need a spender. You still need some coin generation, which you have in the leader, of course. But I don't think Dijkstra is at the moment OP. I saw some suggestions to nerfing it, and I was looking at the suggestions, and whichever would be like every suggestion by the community would make the leader significantly worse, and I don't think I would play him over other leaders. Then, for example, one suggestion was that he should just gain a coin every time he plays a crime.
I think Pumpkin's a fan of that change, actually. But that was early on. He may have changed his mind. That was like days ago. I saw him say something like that.
Yeah, that takes away a big upside Dijkstra has. Like, you can play low tempo crime cards on, for example, red coin in round 1, and it carries over. Well, it won't work like that anymore, right? So I don't know. I think then the leader gets much worse back then. I also saw some suggestions to do the cap on the number of coins he can have. I'm not a big fan of caps. I'm not.
Seems
sure
like that was
what you guys think.
It was very deliberately getting around it. Like, I feel like it's just very deliberately. He breaks the rules, right? Like, that's kind of like he's Dijkstra. He breaks the rules. Haha. Like, it kind of works flavor wise. It seems like, so it sounds like, Molegion, you're on the side that, yeah, it's a good leader, but it's beatable, it's vulnerable, there's ways to get around it. Trynet, I feel like, on the side is just that spiritually the leader can just do so many things so well that it makes the other leaders just pale in comparison. Whereas it's beatable, it seems like it could be overtuned anyway. So yes or no question for both of you. Regardless of how you feel about how beatable or how strong the leader is, do you think that Sigismund Dijkstra is an overtuned leader?
Yeah, I will give it to the faction ambassador.
Yeah, I think it's a little overtuned. He just crowds out the other leaders so much. I can't imagine wanting to play any of the other leaders for any of the mechanics other than Firesworn. He just does everything so well.
What about you, Molegion? Do you think you can take a stance on this one? Nothing's gonna happen.
Yeah, I can agree that there could be a minor nerf to Dijkstra, but I would probably focus on the leader provisions rather than the ability itself, just to incentivize playing other leaders in a decks that focus on like different strategy. So you can play, I don't know, you are more incentivized to play Wholesome Junior for bounty than Dijkstra or whatever, just because you can fit in more good cards for that strategy.
That makes the most sense to me. I mean, it's what they've traditionally done. Like, look how great Gurnakora is. Gurnakora has always been great, but 11 feels comfortable, I guess. Maybe it's even not as good as it used to be. I just feel like Gurnakora has a really strong effect, but is provisioned properly. And Dijkstra's got all these extra points stashed away, but really not at any disadvantage for that.
Yeah, that's what I think. If somebody asked me to do something about Dijkstra, I would lower his provision count to 13 and see what happens.
Yeah, all the syndicate leaders have roughly the same kind of like their abilities are roughly costed the same. There's only a point difference between them. Trynet, the syndicate ambassadorship. How did that come to you exactly? What was the story there? Were you approached? What was? I get. Did you have to send in your credentials? Did you have to show that you were someone who could or couldn't be trusted? I guess flavor wise.
They asked, and I said yes.
There you go.
I'm still not entirely sure what I do. Can you help me out with that?
Well, you just be a proud person, and you just remind yourself what color you're so proud about. It's like blue.
Yeah,
That's
you
it.
show off the badge.
I
on the
love
stream.
blue.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so now I love orange. I love burnt. I like burnt sienna or whatever that is. Sepia, the sepia faction. I imagine there's going to be just more and more that's going to come out. I think that much like the Gwent partner program, we're starting to see this stuff unfold. This is a little bit kind of macro Gwent, but we're starting to see Spiro underscore za as it comes in through my text to speech on my stream, which Molegion thinks is a badass name, underscore za. But Spiro is an example. He was recently featured as the Gwent partner featured streamer of the week. I believe Green Cricket was also featured. Also, shout out to Green Cricket for being part of the analyst team for Gwent Masters. He was brought in as well. So lots of news, lots of things are happening, and Gwent Masters, of course, has been announced. September 14th and 15th. Molegion, you're somebody who speaks a lot about the competitive scene and just kind of like the stuff that's going on. So first of all, it's good to see Challenger coming back. I'm sure we can both agree. What else has been going on, though? I know you've been involved with some leagues or some tournaments as well. How is, do you think we're going to get there to September? Challenger's going to happen, and then it's all going to fall back into place. Do you have faith in that right now, Molegion?
Let me tell you the story of my people. Well, I'm obviously, as Damorkis points out in the chat, I speak mostly about stuff that is not going on, not is going on. Well, it's nice that Challenger is back, of course. It's a big celebration of Gwent. It's just a shame that the Challenger number 5 appears more than 1 year after Challenger number 4. It's been so long that people on Reddit, for example, or on Twitch, quite often ask, what is the Challenger? Because there's so many new players who have never seen a Gwent tournament and they don't even know that they exist. It's such a shame because...
Well, 2 expansions have come out. That's the thing. That's like a big thing. 2 expansions have come out since a tournament has happened. A tournament, a CD Projekt Red tournament of any, or a tournament.
Exactly.
It's like a big amount of people. Like whenever an expansion comes out, there's marketing, there's push, there's like, this is a revenue thing. This is a product that we're making. Hey, it brings people out. The what is it? The email newsletter goes like, I get 2 of them, right? Because I have Commandos for an address as well. Like I get them all the time. It's constantly bringing people back in. The competitive scene is very mysterious. This is not like a question I even thought about asking, but do you think it has anything to do with how the last tournament went? The only homecoming tournament we've seen. I was like in it, so I have a hard time like remembering what it was like as an experience. But was the tournament so? Did you think it needed enough? Do you think there's enough fine tuning that needed to be done to the competitive scene, or is it just time and? Probably, I don't know. I'm just spitballing here. I don't know what's going on either, but we're almost there is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I was kind of in it too.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just wish everybody could experience, at least from the viewer point of from the point of view of the watchers, how great Gwent is when people are playing in tournaments, right? And of course we have some nice initiatives, like there is this the tournament by European Gwent Collective. So sorry to you guys. it's this time like I guess European Wild Hunts.
Yeah, right.
You can qualify for a qualifier basically through one of the 8 tournaments. And the main event will take place in Italy, and apparently it's going to be great. You can still sign up, for example, for the tournament hosted by Team Aretuza.
Can we have a link in the chat for something like that? That would be a great thing to get a link of as well.
Sure. Yeah, I can. Or maybe Damorkis could find it.
I know there's some TA fanboys in the chat, as there should be.
It's this weekend,
chats.
right?
It's this weekend.
This weekend, yeah. There's lots going on. I got. I feel like I could just. It's been a long time since I played in a tournament of any game. I feel like I could really just kind of get a reminder of like that grind. I know it's like you got to take a whole weekend off sometimes, but man, oh man, there it is. There's the challenge link. Because I don't have my second monitor, I can't get to it because it's on my external my laptop now. But I will make sure to get that in the show notes as well as the description for the video. If you're watching it in time, it's this weekend. Yeah, the European Gwent Collective, very interesting. But you mentioned, yeah, it's for European people, and as North Americans, it's harder for us to obviously be involved in some of these things that involve traveling. Recently, there was a big get-together. It was the FanEd coup, and that was organized by Team Aretuza. You were there, Molegion? You were there for sure, right?
No, sadly I wasn't there. I was at my grandparents' 50th wedding anniversary. So
well, that's important. Family stuff definitely is important. I just figured because you were a Polish native that you would have been there, but
yeah. So I didn't go to Warsaw in the end, but it was a nice event. I really enjoyed. If somebody played Hearthstone in the past, I'm not sure if you guys did.
I like the Fireside Gathering. I think we just
Fireside gatherings. They were awesome. They were my favorite part of Hearthstone. 50 or 40 people together in a cafe and playing Hearthstone. You have something in common with literally every single person in there because you play the same game, and I imagine it was the same with Gwent. I hope it will happen more often all around the world, so the community can gather and play together. And it's all nice, but I think it just won't replace the big stake tournaments that are really, that really make the competition important, and you really see the best of the best in Gwent, which would be really nice to have.
I feel like for the most part that this time that's being spent in between events is for, we saw the spectator mode was available for us to use at the Gwent Open, so we were able to use a spectator mode that was in production in March, so long ago, right? So like this is something that is approaching a finished state, I would imagine at this point, given that it's had almost a homecoming's time to be polished, as well as the fact that Berge is teasing that mobile is almost ready as well. He's been playing it like in his meetings at CD Projekt Red. So, I mean, all of these things take resources. It's possible that we want to come back into a competitive scene where we can play Gwent on our phones, spectator mode is available, and then all of a sudden a new expansion is dropping at the same time. And then we have a challenger before that happens, and then, I don't know, I guess then it's World Masters, and then it's Season 2. So hopefully they're planning some Season 2 stuff as well. I want to be really excited about Gwent in 2020, even though we know Cyberpunk's coming out, and I know we all probably secretly have a little bit of Cyberpunk in our heart because we all love CD Projekt Red, but I would like it to be a very important competitive year for Gwent in 2020. But I feel like I started talking about North America and Europe in that the faction ambassadors, all but one of the faction ambassadors are actually North American, whereas the player base, as far as the pro base, seems to be mostly European. So I find that strange. Jagras is the only one who's not located in North America. As Shinmeri Oceanmud, yourself, Trynet, and Shinmeri Oceanmud, Sir Pumpkin, Trynet, myself, and then there's Jagras. And I'm forgetting somebody? Ooh. Am I forgetting somebody, or is that 6? Let's say that was 6. We got it right. All right. So what's up next? So full test. Northern Realms got the biggest change, right? One of the things I talked about before we got started here is that we were obviously going to talk about Dijkstra. We're going to talk about the Syndicate, obviously, because we got the faction ambassador, and we should definitely take that time. But Northern Realms, well, we got the Northern Realms faction ambassador on the show as well. And let me say that things have changed in the North. Lots of new cards, totally new play patterns. Like Vandergrift alone changes a lot of the ways that you can play for carryover. The new big new effect cards, Falibor, Kirametz, Bloody Baron being this like crazy high provision reset to kind of like the foil to Peter Sar Gwenlove. And Formation coming back, changing Visigored into this powerful new card, just with that Zeal being always available on that card. It's pretty strong. And, just in general, Full Test getting a buff to his ability, now getting a boost by 2, plus the Zeal effect as well. One of the questions that I asked, well, you know what, let's get to that later. I want to talk about the Detlav comparison later. But we're talking about Northern Realms, we're talking about the patch, but we're also talking about CD Projekt Red saying, no hotfix coming, like, keep going, guys, keep playing. We'll review. Gentlemen, how do we feel about Northern Realms? How do we feel about Full Test? I guess we can talk from the point of view of competitive. We also can talk about the point of view from fun. I think a lot of new cards is always fun for the game. But how strong is full test? I guess anybody who wants to grab this one can go for it.
I guess I'll go first. So pre-patch full test was already like arguably a tier 1 deck. Green Knight was putting up, I think it was one of the highest FMMRs among any faction for the whole season with full test. And then post-patch, all the weaknesses that deck had were patched up. So now you're more consistent because the new Roche Merciless gives you access to more blue stripes. You have a lot more big plays, where one of the big issues before was it was kind of easy to bleed out some of your bigger plays because you only had the initial blue stripe combo, the Pavetta, and your Draug. Now you have your Selkirk is bigger, your Prince is bigger, you have potentially Bloody Baron, potentially Kira. You still have Draug. Draug got even better. Your full test charges are more impactful. They do an extra point. It makes your duels bigger. Yeah, the deck's best cards are buffed. It got more consistent. The combo's easier to pull off. The combo's bigger. And while you can tech against the commando package with stuff like Moondust and Muzzle, you still have to beat the rest of the deck. And the rest of the deck is still just really good.
There's a lot of deck, yeah. It's
if
like like Draug being in the list, I'm like, do I even need this card anymore? Like, it's just so... I mean, Draug's great, but it's almost... I don't know. Like, it's just there's so many good cards you can put into those lists now. Molegion, what do you think about full test?
Yeah, well, with this one, I'm more keen to agree because obviously full test is, I think, unarguably the best deck in the meta right now. Well, it's funny case with the full test before the patch. Trynet is saying that was the month I took off, so of course I knew the deck is around, but didn't really get to face it or play it myself. But it's funny, right? Because nothing really changed for NR. I think back then the cards were there, the leader was there, and it kind of appeared out of nowhere, right? It was there all the time, and
it happens
suddenly to be very good, even though some people for a good reason said that in what was it? I think it was right after introduction of Syndicate that NR is basically a dead faction. There's nothing good to play there, and then full test out of nowhere on a white horse coming in and proving everyone wrong. So it's funny. I wonder how many decks like that we have in the game at the moment. Maybe we have something for monsters. Monsters are the dead faction right now.
It's true. That is the faction that's under the most. I think before the patch, people were like, Nilfgaard's going to be the sixth faction. I'm like, I don't think so, dudes. I really didn't think that we could put that. I thought that the fight for the bottom was very alive. It seems like Monsters is definitely unpopular. I played a little, but I played a little Death Wish, so I mean that's got a lot of terrible matchups in the first place. It's a Swears meta. Philip is everywhere. Muzzle's everywhere. Why even bother? Death Wish is one of the keywords that didn't really get kind of a little bit of a facelift in kind of like the value that's provided based on the setup. Like Northern Realms sped up, but like a lot of the ways that Monsters were slow did not speed up in comparison. But I know that they're looking at other factions afterwards. But what Northern Realms gained was like what Northern Realms was able to do that was really good. The stuff with Pavetta and the Commandos and Draug, there was lack of reliability in some cases where it seemed like, you know, your opponent was always getting their Siggy and always getting their Redanian out on round one. And you just can't always, because you need to draw the Commando, you need to play the Commando, and now you don't have to do that. But in addition, like they thought that maybe they wouldn't take power. I was hoping that they would keep the stuff that Northern Realms was doing good, fine, and then they would tune the other stuff, like the way they removed Reveal from Nilfgaard and kind of just got some other stuff in there. Some of the cards were good, some of the cards were not. But in Northern Realms' case, it seems like every change was good, every new card added was great, everything that was good is better, everything that was bad is good. And the stuff that's not good is so... it's not good. It's not that it's not good because the archetype isn't alive. I think it's just that there's just so many more points and other ways you can play right now with Northern Realms. So I haven't even really played the shield stuff. Seems like it could be fun, but it seems like it's
fun, but that's about it.
Yeah, like it's fun, which is good. I mean, people say the new full test is not fun. It's boring. Unless winning is just the only thing you care about.
Well, fun is subjective.
It is subjective.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I think that winning is fun, for example.
They say Hyper Thin Nilfgaard is fun. A lot of people in my chat love that deck specifically, so that's pretty popular at the moment.
I hate that deck so much. So many games come down to just raw coin flips.
So you hate it? You hate it just because it just comes down to the last card being flipped around, like if it's Tibor.
Does
or
my
if it's
Zarth
Ointment?
flip the right card? Yes
Yeah,
or
does
no?
my Zarth flip the right card? We actually, Molegion and I played a game in the co-op where it came down to, well, no, we lost the game anyway, but it was Zarth flipping an Ointment, but it could have been Tibor.
Yeah, our game came down to offensive Vilgefortz pulling the only card that wouldn't win us the game.
That's
the
true.
round,
Yeah,
so.
that is. In retrospect, I feel good about that game.
Yeah, I mean, I really like the reveal. And the reveal Nilfgaard, I think that's the right way to call it.
Reveal
it's
Nilfgaard
reveal
lives.
because it plays 2 reveal cards.
The only ones that are left.
Or the big Nilfgaard. Magbeard, I will give you a reason to hate this deck now. You know what it reminds me of?
Hand buff, Nilfgaard hand buff.
Yeah,
my
Nilfgaard
least
hand
favorite
buff
deck
from
of all
Beta.
time. And I have a lot of gripes with how Consume was, but I think Nilfgaard hand buff was my least favorite deck of all time. It was just like, it just represented everything that I just didn't like about Gwent at that time. It was just like big, stupid numbers that don't, like, it's like, yeah, I could beat it if I have this card. Sometimes I don't have this card and I lose. It's big, stupid numbers that don't matter. So it's like that, but only for like the last couple of cards. The whole like other 80% of the game feels maybe like a normal game of Gwent that I might be able to win. So that's why I'm not too mad about it. But it seems really consistent, and it gets a lot of. It's like what it really feels like is Beastmaster Skellige, where it just comes down to having 2 or 3 units that you could just put a giant amount of numbers on, and even if they have tall removal, the other tall things you have are good enough. So that deck doesn't do very well, but you'll see it every now and then. Why is this one more popular? Why do you guys think this one's more popular?
Nilfgaard. People really like Nilfgaard.
People really like Nilfgaard. YouTube tells me that story every time I post a Nilfgaard deck. It's just, people just love it. Whenever the wind howls, I hear the name Mogwai. It's just, they want a hero. They want a hero, I think. It's just like the Witcher Mill stuff. Everybody loved it. People think that the Witcher Mill stuff or Mill in general, and I like when I don't know what to play on my stream, they're just like Mill. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is about Nilfgaard that attracts so many people. People love the bad guys, Rogue Digit saying in chat. Well, what haven't we talked about? I guess we've kind of covered. Maybe we could just talk about monsters just a little bit more. Just where is monsters really falling down right now? Is it just a perception thing, or do you think that they really? I think that a lot of where are the matchups that they're really bad with at this point?
So I've been big on Arrakis Queen for a while. I think a lot of the issue there is just what the metagame looks like right now. The deck is not very good against Draug. It's really bad against Fire Scorpions out of Ardal. Usurper's obviously a nightmare. Mm-hmm. You're kind of all right against the DJ decks if you're playing Holistic and Push, but aside from that,
yeah,
there just aren't a lot of good matchups in the metagame anymore.
It's true.
Yeah, you
Arrakis Queen always feels pretty good.
You are generally unfavored versus Northern Realms, versus Nilfgaard, versus other monsters if you lose the coin flip, versus Skoyatel and etc. There's just not a lot of matchups that are good for any kind of monster deck. Although, as I said, I believe there is a good monster list, and I think the meta should slowly head towards like what we would call it on Twitch like a smork meta. Some pushy meta that rewards pushing ground 2 and big last say a lot. So maybe Woodland will get some spotlight, I don't know. But I think the problem with monsters really lies in the fact that they got pretty much no good cards in the last 2 expansions. Like they basically received nothing. Monsters started really strong. They were very strong at the beginning of Homecoming. And they kept getting nerfed, even though at some point they kept getting nerfed when they weren't even that strong. Never got anything in return. Like they got Deathlove Higher Vampire, sure, nice card, and Kaidan got slightly buffed, but that's just not enough. The vampires kind of suck.
There's not enough going on with it's just you're all in on like Oriana and Crimson Curse, which you would probably not even play.
Yeah, which is just not very good for vampires. They got slightly buffed this patch, but I'm looking at these cards and I don't feel incentivized to try vampires yet. There's something wrong with that. Well, yeah, monsters found the same in the poor spot. I'm sure many people are glad about it because many times we could hear or read words that monsters were never bad. Well,
monsters,
here they are.
They're never unpopular, that's for sure. And I think it's just like, it's kind of like Druid syndrome if you've played Hearthstone back in the day. Druids were like really, really strong, and they just didn't get any good cards for like 2 or 3 expansions, I feel like, at the very, very start of that game. because they had the ability to get ahead in resources over every other class. So it felt like, just like how monsters have like these big units and they can always play like very tempo wise. It's difficult. Like you have a card like Old Spear Tip around, you have cards like Osrail around. It's probably tricky. But now it doesn't, like now in the universe that we're in right now, it does seem like a lot of cards pale in comparison. I think I like the Cyclops buff the most because I feel like that card, like I missed that card a lot. And it just seemed like they put it kind of out of realistic reach. But I think that Woodland might have something there. I'd like to try a little bit more Erica's Queen as well.
I have so much preferred they just buffed Woodland's power back up. Not Woodland's power up, Cyclops' power back up. Make it a more reasonable card to play in round 3.
The 5 strength. It was 5 strength, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it feels so bad to play a 4 in round 3.
Yeah, especially after they buffed literally every other bronze in the game and they just left Cyclops at 4. It seems just unnecessary.
Yeah, it's the trade-off of you losing the points as well for the removal, and I think that the trade-off is fair considering how they've kind of stashed away the ways you can get the big chunky removal to remove stuff. I feel like Cyclops was under a pretty fair restriction, but yeah, I think they were just like a little bit wary about what they wanted to do with monsters. The question that I wanted to now revisit now is about Detlef, the leader. When Detlef was introduced in Crimson Curse, there was an immediate hotfix to the power level of his ability. Detlef used to be deal 2 damage and then death blow, summon an Ekamara. So if you were able to trigger the death blow every time, you would not only perhaps have reach on your removal, which would help you get rid of Vengeance, and you'd get 12 points in return. It was pretty strong at the time in a meta where there was a lot of death blow, a lot of dryads around, lots of things to kill. And you had your Tainted Ale, your Manticore Venom. So they nerfed him. And now in this new world, do you think Detlef would be overpowered at 2 ping? Or do you think that any leader we have in the game right now is more strong than Detlef used to be before that nerf? Try it out. Let's throw that one. Whoever wants.
Isn't he like almost better now? Because all the breakpoint's now 4, and monsters have a lot of things that deal 2. So now Detlef completes your removal even more efficiently on the 4s. Where before you'd still end up wasting a point killing a 3 when you had to kill like an Arbalist or something.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's so many more 4s to kill. I don't know.
So many forks. Well, the pings are at 2, and Detlef's ping is at. Oh, you're talking about what he would be like now. It would be much better now. Yeah.
Now that the breakpoint's 4, it's even bigger of a deal because you're killing engines too. It's not just completing your removal on smaller things that aren't as relevant. Like making sure that you get value off of your leader ability rather than actually completing your removal.
I guess the question is a 2 ping on a leader, is that or multiple 2 pings on a leader, that kind of reach. Like Croc's got the cooldown and can ping once every 2 turns, so being able to ping, I guess, all those pings at once is probably where the concern was. But it seems like that's a new concern. So yeah, the reach would be pretty good, I suppose. But would it be too good, I guess, is the question when you compare it to what like Full Test is doing, let's say.
I don't know. I kind of don't want Ord's Detlef ability back. I don't think it's just interesting, like monsters killing. The original idea was that CDPR wanted to give monsters like some control options, which is fair, but it doesn't encourage like the cards that monsters have are just not good with that strategy unless you want to go all in on control or something like that. And it encourages strategies that are very frustrating to play against. And I think the biggest problem with Detlef is that the Ekimaras you spawn are useless. They are just raw points because there are no vampire synergies. And well, it's just I think that's not the way to help Detlef here. He's strictly worse than Woodland, I believe now. And I like doing some cards for fun. And before Crimson Curse was released, before I even knew it will be the expansion, I had an idea for a vampire card that would play a bronze vampire from your hand and draw a card, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking maybe monsters should follow the identity that Unseen Elder has a little bit, that they are good in playing all 3 rounds, and maybe Detlef should get a similar ability that refreshes every in every round, and it should be something like that. Maybe that would encourage playing vampires if they are also stronger. I would like Detlef to go somewhere towards this way rather than the control identity.
I think almost every leader can be made more interesting with a passive ability that kind of supports what they're trying to do. So you look at like King of Beggars, his ability is very boring, but he has this extra tribute passive, so it's pretty cool. Erica's Queen didn't have an active ability before, but her passive ability wasn't enough. So now we have leaders that have active abilities and passive abilities, as well as Dijkstra, you could kind of say as well. I think that like more of that is very exciting. So if you could give something that cared about 2-point units, like you don't necessarily want to pigeonhole them into vampires only, but if you just do something, I don't know what it is, but passive, yeah, you're nodding Trynet, passive leaders. You're a fan of those.
I love passive leaders. I hate one-shot leaders. I really like it when your leader has impact throughout the entire game.
Yeah, I also am not a huge fan of one-shot leaders as well. With the only exception being Henselt is probably the only one that I like to play a little bit, but he's a one-shot leader I like to play earlier in a round than later specifically. So I play him differently than maybe like some Heralds were played or some Frans were played. At least they're keeping them interesting, but yeah, passive ability is definitely where it's at. Gurnikora is kind of like a passive ability, right? It's like the fruit's always
Croc
there.
is too.
Croc
The
is
thing
too.
you constantly have access to.
Yeah, you always have access to it. That's the thing. Yeah, it makes it's good that there's two different kinds of leaders specifically because it definitely changed the way you play around or play into these rounds with these leaders as well.
So, do you have any suggestions for a passive ability for Detlef? Because I think I have something in mind. For example, what if Detlef would spawn a Crimson Curse for whatever turns if you control 3 adjacent vampires too? Something like that.
Well, I think maybe spawning Crimson Curse for a certain amount of time based on a death blow, maybe instead of spawning the vampires at all, could be something. It also could be something if he cared about units being spawned in the first place, like kind of like the spawn effect of Syndicate. It's maybe just because he spawns the vampires, and there are things that spawn things like the Katakan spawns a vampire, and Neckers spawn another Necker and stuff like that. So I don't know, something like that maybe.
Yeah, I just wish we could see some more Crimson Curse effect on the board. It's really cool, and I don't think I've ever seen it outside of the maybe very early in the Crimson Curse meta. And I personally really like weather and boon effects. Is it still called boons?
I'm just
I'm
raw
not
effects
sure.
now.
Yeah, it's just raw effects.
Well, people in my chat today were talking about because I was playing the Greatsword, so we were dropping rain on the board and Ragnarok, and it just felt like real weather gameplay, like how it used to feel. But the weather effects look great, but it's just like they don't feel as they're not a driving force to any which way as opposed to like as it used to felt. Like it used to feel like a weather based deck, or Dagon was always in the meta. Aridin at a very short period of time. Frost was huge, obviously, and being able just to play Dagon like early on, lock up the rows against Alchemy and Nilfgaard, like weather was very important. Like having also the Silver Mages were in every faction had access to like something that produced weather very easily. So that's why Triss Telekinesis just feels like the most expensive Silver Mage, because when you play her with the rain, it feels kind of like we're kind of close to actually playing weather here. Weather's missing the support card, says Demorcus. Yeah, that's what I agree. It's a scary thing though. It's the row limit is not, or the row counter, or the turn counter is nice. Definitely makes it more interesting. But yeah, weather has no real support right now. But what would you guys say is your favorite change overall in 3.1? If you could narrow it down to one, or maybe you could just hit me with like a couple of them, but like something that might stand out that isn't maybe obvious, like just a clear power spike in something. But what do you guys think is one of your favorites? I'm gonna start. I think probably Kira Metz in general, just as a card that's just like such a sheer amount of points that does require some level of setup, a lot of provisions to play the card, but the payoff is like up front right away. Really works with humans, really works with like all the things the Northern Realms try to do. Very formidable, strong effect. I just thought that Kira Metz was a cool addition to Northern Realms, and I don't use her in every deck, but I like her a lot. What do you guys think?
I would probably say the buffs to the neutral tutors, the Royal Decree ADC marching orders. I think it opens up a lot of deck building possibility.
All the tutors.
Yeah, very easy to take advantage of before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought I would hear more about that, like how tutoring just got a overall universal buff. All the faction tutors plus everything the tutors cards, even Last Wish also buffed as well. What about you, Molegion? What was one of your favorite changes?
Yeah, I think that this patch overall was really good, and it's a milestone in Gwent history because of something that I was hoping will happen for a long time. and it's overall buffing the strength of the bronzes and lowering the impact of damage on the cards. I think that just makes the gameplay more healthy. It feels better. That damage doesn't feel OP anymore. I've, at least for now, I only played like 100 games this season, and it's damage feels to be in the right place, and bronzes don't feel terrible to play. We can come back to eavesdrop for a moment. Whenever I play eavesdrop in Syndicate, I'm looking at my hand. I'm like, damn, I want to keep every single card of this. Everything is good.
They all work,
What-
right? You have
what
win
do I-
cons
what
at
do I
4
do
and
at
5
bottom?
in Syndicate. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah. Imagine like when your worst card in the hand is Witch Hunter, you know your hand is good, right?
Yeah.
So I really like that. I think that's cool. That's something people really didn't like in Homecoming at the beginning. Yeah, those are my two favorite changes.
Yeah, I feel like a part of it was kind of the shock of like the stat squishing that occurred. It's like, but there's only so like I've always felt like when we'd have cards that would touch. What was Siri Nova hit 25 at one point? She hit 25 at one point, then it was 22, I think. But you have cards that would be like 25-point plays in a game that just had potentially longer rounds because you didn't have a hand limit as well, so you just were able to play more points in some of these games, and they were just big points. But the thing is, there's a lot of ways you can count to 30, and there's less ways you can count to 10. So making sure you have like unique effects that still accomplish what you want Gwent to accomplish. You still want things to remove, and you still want ways to protect, and that's always going to be about raising the values or lowering the values of cards on the board. If you have just a little bit more beef in there, you can just have much more interesting effects and better breakpoints, like Trynet was saying about Detlef, the breakpoint on engines being at 4. Pings of 2 used in tandem is very useful right now, or a 3 and 1, and that kind of in situations with Ethna and Croc. That's what I really like personally. But yeah, I feel like it often feels like, oh, can I counter my opponent's engine value without removing his engine? Can I just kind of like cancel it out? Like, it's more about building a board state that can just outvalue your opponent in a lot of ways. And I agree. I like that as well. People in the chat, do you have any questions for the Syndicate Faction Ambassador or Molegion here? Team Air2s and Team Rankstar on tap for you to ask questions for the top of the ladder, or whatever you want to ask about these guys. I mean, they have their fan bases, of course. Trynet does stream a lot. People asking, first of all, well, I'll just jump to this question that I thought I saw earlier. Trynet, do you sleep? I think I asked you this last time. You're on the show
apparently.
as well. Not today, apparently. This is normally nap time for you.
I'm usually asleep by now.
You usually sleep by now? Well, we are wrapping things up as well. Usually when I go to the chat. Well, here's the question, I guess. Trynet, the first one coming in from Vixan in the chat. How would you change Dijkstra? We know Molegion will reduce the provisions, but how would you maybe change it if you feel like he needs a change? Or would you just buff the other leaders?
Again, I think the big issue is the crowded design space. I would like to see a leader that just does something different rather than another leader that just makes coins. I think Guthrin does that good enough. I'd rather just see DJ do something totally different. As to what I would exactly change that to, I'm not really sure. I haven't given it much thought. I'm not a game designer.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Player is a game designer.
Yeah. Well, we all think we'd know. It's like, wow, this would feel better if the way that I lost to it, I didn't lose to it and I won instead. It just doesn't necessarily make the actual game better. It's hard. You got to see it from your point of view, but also from a player's point of view. And different, yeah, I don't envy them. It's very hard. It's very hard to get this stuff right. Demorcus in the chat, returning challenger champion, Demorcus in the chat. What is the best and worst thing about Gwent for you this year so far, and how would you change the worst? Well, if the worst thing is lack of events, we can't really go back and change that. So we can't do that one. But I would say the best and worst thing. The best thing is the fact that we got 2 expansions. And we are moving forward very clearly. The game is moving forward, like, undoubtedly. I think that's easily the best thing, because being subjective about other best things, it just pales in comparison to just how I feel about the direction the game is moving in. And the way Jason Slamba can sit there and actually say, you guys are going to run down the streets screaming, you won't believe what we do with the game. Like, even if that's, like, half true, like, what could that be? Like, I'm very interested in what's coming up. But the worst part, I mean, that's a tough one. Outside of lack of pro events, which directly affects me in many ways, I would say it's hard. I guess it's just, and then the last patch was really good. I feel like the worst thing about Gwent in general is just when you make a mistake, sometimes it feels like you lose a turn. I guess that feels like it's very punishing, but I don't know how I would change that. I think that's something that a lot of people like about the game. What about you, Molegion? What is the best thing about Gwent this year?
Does it have to be strictly the game or just an experience? If an experience, I would say it would be Gwent Open 8 for me this year, because it was a really nice experience. And apparently I don't suffer from quarterfinal curse, even though this thingy above me suggests I actually was a semi-finalist.
Oh no, we went this long. Gwent Open. You know what? I put alumni all the time because I kept forgetting. I think I just kept forgetting.
I mean, this is technically correct. I was
You were.
also
It's not wrong.
finalist in Gwent Open 6. You are not wrong.
Not wrong.
Yeah, that was really nice experience, meeting all the casters, the players, the CDPR friends again. It was really nice. For in the game itself, I think introducing Syndicate was pretty nice. I know a lot of people dislike Syndicate, but I like this faction. I think it's a really well designed faction. When you one way to know that the faction is well designed, when you play against Nilfgaard and they play Bribery or Imperial Diplomacy, and they play something like absolutely useless for them because your card is so synergistic that it only works in your deck.
That's how Northern Realms used to feel, but now you can get all these good cards.
Yeah, they are just
like enjoy your Blue Stripes Commando, Blue Stripes Scout.
Yeah, so I think Syndicate in the game. The worst thing, well, of course, outside of the lack of the events, I'm not that mad about lack of the events. I'm more mad about lack of communication. This is the worst part. Like, I don't even know what to expect. And when we expressed our concern, me and the Morkis, on Twitter back in April, we were told that CDPR needs a bit more time to come back to us with details. And well, that's not specified how much a bit more time is, right? And
True.
We are still waiting.
True.
But of course, I don't know, for the game itself.
Just a quick note though. I'm glad that they didn't promise or overpromise anything.
Yeah,
in
sure,
that case,
sure.
Like, take the time. I mean, I just hope that season 2 is out there for sure. Like, we gotta.
Okay, I'm gonna say that the worst part about Gwent is just overall the lack of marketing, because the Gwent feels like the game feels so good.
Do you guys still see the arena ads? I still see the arena ads with Gauntro Dim. Is it just me? Is it like an old cookie in my browser or something? But I do see them on YouTube sometimes.
Maybe it's just you are a target for that because you are in Canada and they did something like that. I don't know.
That's actually it's funny. That actually is a real thing that could happen. Canadian advertising
I'm not sure.
Does things with assets and with companies all the time.
I see Crimson Curse ads from time to time.
Okay, so some people in chat are saying that they have seen the Gauntro Dim arena. And I watched the whole thing through. I'm like, did they just repurpose this? Is it just Gauntro saying, come play Gwent, it's good? No, it's straight up arena marketing. Okay, yeah, I mean, marketing is, they just gotta get people out there. Like, it's
and
Witcher,
the game
right?
Is so good.
Everybody loves
really
Witcher.
Good.
Yeah, the game's good. It's unique. It does not, like, oh my god, the differences between this game and every other card game on the market are just myriad. Where do you even start? No face, 3 rounds, like everything's a planeswalker. It's crazy. I just love this game. It's keep making it unique. Real quick, I tried at best and worst, and then we're gonna get one more question here, and I think we might just wrap it up.
Yeah, so my best and worst are like kind of opposites. So on one hand, the best is how fast we're getting releases. Patches every month, we're getting expansions every 2 months. It's a crazy fast release cycle. The worst thing though has been the downtime between events. It's now been 3-4 ranked seasons in a row that just haven't mattered for anything. There's been no qualifiers. There's been no tournaments to qualify for at all. It's it's been tough to play ladder. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, because you're putting in all these hours and like you have like this thing that you're always working towards all the time. I mean, obviously we staying fresh on the game. We do enjoy playing the game, obviously, and we stream the game as well and try. Well, you stream as well, Molegion, once every now and then. You have been known to turn on the camera once a year. Yeah, so I mean, we want to obviously like be involved with the game, but there's always more excitement to infuse. There's always more excitement to infuse into the game, and the release. Yeah, and also the adding the faction thing is just, I said it when it was added as well. Like, it doesn't happen very often that a game gets that kind of addition, like ever. Like I said it at the time on Twitter, Magic's never gotten another color added. Hearthstone's never gotten another class added. It's a huge undertaking, and it becomes more and more daunting as time goes by because the card pool increases. So you can't just have an expansion, a faction with just less cards, or you could, and it looks weird. There you go. Yeah, and I also just wish that there were just less bugs in patches. I think that's another huge thing. Just less bugs on release and patches. Sometimes I just forget because usually the hotfix is good and I just give them the benefit of the doubt. But, it's always like first hour, Assimilate was bugged, there was, it's usually okay though. I'll read one more.
Fast enough.
Yeah, it gets fixed fast enough. I mean, as long as it doesn't affect any tournaments. One more tag here. We have here from, let's see. There's so many I want to ask here. All right, I'm going to give this one to Jamoni. It's an open-ended question. What new and or returning effects do you want to see in future expansions? This will be the last question before we wrap up the podcast here. New or returning. So something that has been gone that could come back specifically. I mean, I think the obvious answer for a lot of people is probably armor. I think it's a lot harder to balance than people think. And I think that shield is functioning in a way that is probably satisfying what armor wants to do. But if they have a way to bring armor back in a way that is interesting, I feel like it just seems like it's a very Gwenty thing that isn't there anymore. So if they could do it, but they would probably use it as an overall balancing. Like, I don't think Northern Realms gets it all. I don't think that's going to happen. I think armor is just introduced to a certain amount of units that care about it. I also think that approaching untold lore, like the other vampire tribes from across the Karathi Desert, or obviously Zerrikania is just like the easy low hanging fruit. But I think that the vast beyond of like, where did the Voidnoid come from with Dagon? What's going on with Salamandra, Zerrikania? What's going on in Ulfir? Stuff like that. I mean, Ulfir could do some cool stuff with like gem crafts and enchantments. Like, there's lots of cool lore stuff that you could do. But calling Jamoni and not someone isn't a stream after all. It's true. I actually call people by name sometimes. But that's kind of what I'm looking forward to, I guess. New cool effects. I feel like they can do it with Syndicate, so they have the ability. What do you think, Molegion?
Yeah, armor would be nice, but speaking of returning effects, I would like to see Strengthen back. Strengthen was a nice effect, and it has a lot of potential to be very fun, but at the same time, I think it could be a little bit game breaking. Although I really like my favorite deck of all time probably was Great Swords.
Yeah,
I know people hated that deck. I'm just a hipster. I seem to enjoy everything that everyone hates.
Well, did you like Consume? Were you a Consume player?
I liked Consume mirrors. I think they were very skillful. They consume so much, not necessarily so much. But yes, I would like to have like a strengthen effect that makes your deck stronger with every round, because you strengthen your units and then you resurrect them and they are even stronger. You build the carryover, you pay the price. For example, your unit is slightly weaker at the beginning under the provision curve, but then it gets better because it's strengthened, something like that, something similar to what Great Swords were. I would really like to see that back.
I feel like the Ancrate Warrior is kind of like channeling the spirit of something that's stronger than when it comes out of the graveyard. So if they could maybe attach strengthening to something that it strengthens like one time or a certain amount of times, so when it grows into the graveyard, you have more graveyard effects, but isn't something that like you can resurrect 22-point greatswords. I think Jamoni, the person who asked the question, was not happy with your answer, Molegion. Lots of GS angeries. Lots of people.
I'm sorry, guys.
Not big fans. Trynet, what would you like to see return, or what new effect do you think that would be, I guess, sensible added to the game?
Molegion actually stole my answer, so I'm going to say the opposite and say weakening. It just gives counterplay.
Banishing.
Yeah, it gives counterplay to strengthen. And yeah, I really like the strengthen, weaken, resurrect dynamic that was pretty prevalent before Homecoming. Almost every faction had access to some kind of resurrect effect. There were a lot of mandrakes going around to try to take advantage of that. And I thought it led to really cool gameplay.
I'm gonna give one more for the answer. Just one thing that I kind of miss. I don't expect it to ever come back, and it wouldn't bother me if it never came back. But I kind of miss playing the leader on the board. I kind of miss having a strength. I mean, it changes the way leaders are played completely. Like, obviously, playing a leader on the board means that you use your leader once, and that's how every Gwent leader was. But Arnulf is an example of a leader that's played on the board, and he's unique in that way. You know what? Actually, I don't know. I do like the ones that have multiple charges, and I guess it wouldn't really work that way. I guess it wouldn't really work in the new Gwent. But there's something about having tempo and an effect being attached to a body specifically that I think more leaders could do. Detlef isn't really doing it. Arnulf is doing it. I guess I just need to play Arnulf, as Spiro is saying in the chat. Just play Arnulf.
having a leader that has a passive ability, and then you can play for proactive points, and then you lose that passive ability after you do. Sounds like kind of interesting design space.
Yeah. Like it's kind of like how they changed sort of Ada's like sequencing when you would probably play Ada. Like before you were more interested in playing it late so you get Hubert value. But now you have to make the decision, okay, well, now I have this removal that is better if I play it in a certain situation where I get all the bleed effect as well. Do I spend it now or not? If I spend it, then I lose the bleed opportunity, or maybe I only have one unit that gets the bleed. So, yeah, moving single-use leaders more towards, and by taking Hubert out of the game, I think they did this in general, moving single-use leaders more towards like that decisive moment that then changes the rest of the game. Herald is much less interesting in this respect, whereas something like Francesca is far more interesting because she has so many options. Herald feels like a relic of the past because it feels like Hubert, right? You play it, you play the card, you get the big thing at the end of the game, and you win with last say or whatever. But or Ada, because Ada could also remove stuff. So I feel like, we're always moving forward, and we're still moving forward. So far, buff everything is how we're moving forward. And I think that, Gwent's moving forward in a good way. We have Challenger coming up. I have lots going on this month. I'm not sure if there's going to be another full-length podcast in the next couple weeks, but I'm sure there's going to be a lot to talk about. When news breaks, you're going to hear from me, of course, all the time. And I'm going to continue to stream, even though I travel around a lot this month. Molegion, where are you these days? What's Team Aretuza up to? Where can people follow you and find you when you're out there doing Gwent things?
You can find me mostly on Twitter. That's when I'm active. Pretty much like at least once per week I post an update on my thoughts or something like that. It's at @TA_Molegion. And of course, follow Team Aretuza socials on Twitter, and we have an Instagram if you want to see some photos from for example, the tournament we had in Warsaw few days ago. We are also, of course, releasing a meta snapshot soon. As I said at the beginning, we will have one very, very soon, so stay tuned. And yeah, thanks for supporting us.
Yeah, right on. Also, shout out to Ultraman, aka Alessio. He won the Thaned Coup, I believe. Is that correct? He was the one who walked away as the champion in that meeting. I mean, there are a lot of great Gwent players were there. Local, like a lot of players. Easy flight over there to Warsaw, or even train in some cases, or bus in Atsukov's case, I imagine. Trynet, where can people find you when you are out there streaming, as you are streaming quite frequently and not sleeping? Where can people find you out there?
Every day, 1 a.m. to 7 a.m., twitch.tv/Trynet123. I'm also on YouTube, post videos daily, which is mostly just stream highlights. But yeah, I'm active there too.
You're talking about Eastern time when you give those times?
Yeah, of course.
Eastern, NA East, which is 6 hours behind CET, almost always. My friends, this has been a great chat. Great to catch up with you guys. Talk to some of the top players right now. When I personally am not feeling like a good player right now when I play on stream, it's always good just to get some people who are a little bit better at the game into my bubble. That always feels good. But I'm going to hit the outro now. Thanks, everybody, for showing up to the stream. A very healthy audience. Thanks so much for watching on YouTube. If you're watching, if you like the video, show me, tell me. This is Mick Beard for Molegion and Trynet. Best of luck on the path.
Bye.